Your tests have your names on them, she says as she stands waiting for you to take your seats. You sit down across from Matthew. You may begin, says the nurse as she sits down. You flip your test over expecting to see a straightforward series of questions, but this test is like nothing you would ever have imagined. The top of your test page reads, 1. Your target's identifier is TABF. 2. Close your eyes, relax, breathe deeply, and empty your mind. Relax into the emptiness for a few moments. Imagine the window of your mind is black, and continue holding this image. 3. Think of the target's identifier, TABF. Say the letters over to yourself. Empty your mind. Now write down any colors, shapes, temperatures, textures, movement, or other characteristics that come into your mind. Sketch what you see. Do not try to identify it. 4. Close your eyes and quiet your mind again. Write down anything you sense or see beyond the physical description or image you have drawn. You look up from your test to see how Matthew is reacting. But from what you can tell without staring or asking him directly, it appears as if he is answering some very complex science or math questions. At first, you're inclined to raise your hand and ask if you've been given the wrong test, but then you wonder if this is just part of the testing process. Would you raise your hand or not? You decide to answer the questions and see how it all plays out. You look down at the test again. Your target's identifier is TABF. You have no idea what that means, so you take a deep breath and think, TABF, 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 while trying to keep your mind as blank as possible. Immediately you see an image of an icy flat plain that is dipped in at the center. You're glad you have the option of drawing what comes to mind because you don't know how to describe what you're seeing. After drawing what you see, you close your eyes and wait to see if anything else will come to you. Instantly you have the feeling of an ocean, but not an ocean with gentle waves on a sandy tropical beach, which is what you would have normally imagined. Instead, this feeling is of a desolate and frigid ocean, filled with towering icebergs, splitting off and collapsing into the sea. But then, just as you ascend to the top of a mountain peak and are heading down the other side, the feeling shifts. The cold disappears, and you are surrounded by lush green grass and trees. Something utterly impossible if you were actually viewing the North Pole or Antarctica. You remember you're simply supposed to describe feelings and visual images. You hadn't been directed to make sense of what you were seeing. So you write down your perceptions to the best of your ability, and then wait for Matthew to complete his own task. A few minutes after you have both completed your tests, Trevor enters the room. She casually sits close to you and says, "Thank you for taking these tests. I know this may seem like we're rushing to get you both involved, but you'll find it far easier to adjust if you have something to do that will keep you busy. You'll have your results at dinner and your temporary job assignments will begin tomorrow. Ultimately, you'll have the opportunity to try other jobs and you can also volunteer for research projects. Do either of you have any questions?" "I do," says Matthew. "We haven't seen any news about what's happening." "Well, that's because it would be too shocking for many of the patients here." "But we're not patients," you say, "and we'd like to see what's going on." "Yes, of course," says Trevor understandingly as she stands up and walks to a large flat-screen television on the wall. She grabs a remote control and says, I want to caution both of you that this might be very upsetting. Are you sure you want to see it? You and Matthew nod. Trevor turns on the television and dims the lights as Matthew moves around the table and sits next to you. A moment later, a newscast flickers onto the screen. The images are horrific. Some of the clips have been filmed on personal handheld cameras. Some are filmed by the news or from high above in a helicopter. What you see is inconceivable. Mass hysteria is sweeping through San Francisco. No one can leave the city. Cars crash into each other. The Golden Gate and other major bridges in the Bay Area dangle lifelessly above the water they're meant to traverse. Traffic is wedged together in city streets. Highways are totally blocked with people desperate to leave as buildings explode into flames in the background. There are clips of massive earthquakes tearing apart the San Andreas fault line, collapsing everything in its wake. Fighting back tears, you close your eyes, unable to take in any more of what is on the screen. A deep aching in your throat and chest threaten to overwhelm you at any moment. Are our families still okay? You say, feeling a bit selfish to even ask under the circumstances, but you need to know. Sympathetically, Trevor says, "This is all happening in California. As long as there's not an eruption here in the desert, your family should be fine." You sigh in relief as Matthew moves closer and wraps his arm around you. You bury your face in his chest and cry, barely able to breathe, as the weight of all that you have seen clutches at your throat like a noose around your neck. Why don't you two spend the day doing whatever you want? I know this is a lot to take in. Rest up and get a good night's sleep. I'll meet you at the nurse's station in the morning. Matthew nods silently as you sniffle, "Okay." After Trevor leaves, you look up at Matthew teary-eyed and say, "I was totally wrong. It's all happening." "I know," says Matthew, helping you stand up and walking with you to the door. As you walk down the hall, you muster a weak smile and say, "I think I need to have a meltdown by myself, okay?" "Of course," says Matthew gently. "I'll see you at lunch." "Okay," you say, ducking into your room and closing the door tightly. Curling up in your bed, you cry yourself to sleep. You sleep through lunch and would have slept through dinner, but a nurse gently wakes you. "Even if you're not hungry, sweetheart, you need your work assignment for tomorrow." You nod, sigh, and struggle out of bed. You don't wash your face, brush your hair, or even glance at the mirror. You just stumble down the hall to the cafeteria feeling dazed and more lost than you ever thought possible. If everything Trevor has told you is true, what's next? What will become of you and Matthew? After dinner, an attendant hands you and Matthew the results of your aptitude tests. Both results conclude with further testing, level 4. In a low voice, Matthew says, "What do you think this means? Further testing. What was your test like?" "My test?" you say. "It was strange. I was supposed to empty my mind and imagine something." "Like what?" "I don't know exactly. There were these letters, TABF. The test said that the letters were the target identifier. Whatever that means. I was supposed to think about the letters, empty my mind, and see what came into my imagination. What about you? What was your test like?" "Nothing like yours, that's for sure," says Matthew, shaking his head. It said, "Using quantum mechanics, prove that things are thoughts." "Seriously?" you say incredulously. "What did you write?" "Lights out in 15 minutes, says a voice over the intercom. "I'll tell you tomorrow when we have more time," says Matthew hastily, standing up. "It's the last chance for me to take a shower." You stand up. He gives you a hug and whispers, "If you need to talk, just climb under your bed, tap on the vent, and we can talk." You smile and nod, and as you watch him walk down the hall, you feel eternally grateful that somehow you've managed, under the strangest of circumstances, to find a true friend. You barely know each other, and yet you feel comfortable with him. No matter where you are or what's happening, he makes you feel better. Even through a wall vent, he's a great listener, and he always has something intelligent to say, and he quickly admits anything he doesn't know, and he laughs so easily you can't help but laugh with him. And somehow, even in this strange place, you feel at home with him, as if nothing can go wrong as long as he's here with you. Women only have use of showers in the mornings, so you wash your face, brush your teeth, and go to bed. Every part of you is exhausted, yet somehow your mind just won't shut down. You try jumping jacks, push-ups, sit-ups, and finally end up just pacing around your room. When none of that works, you sit on your bed with your back up against the wall and try deep breathing. You want to talk to Matthew through the vent, but you don't have anything that actually qualifies as an emergency. In truth, you just want to hear his voice, but you don't want to bother him. You know a bit about meditation, so you practice focusing on your breath moving in and out of your body. Gradually, you feel a bit calmer, and then, without trying, you find yourself somehow floating outside of your body and looking down at yourself from the ceiling. It feels so familiar, as if you had done this before, but that isn't possible. Yet you have a clear memory that you had once floated through the wall and out into the hall. The moment the thought occurs to you, you find yourself doing just that, floating down the hall and into the common room, where you see a woman sitting alone at one of the tables. "Come, my dear, no one will hear us talking," says the woman quietly. You look at the nursing station, but no one seems to notice your presence. "Are you outside of your body like me?" you ask. "Things are seldom what they seem," says the woman. "The devil is getting closer. In this you have no choice. He has no more power than you. He cannot take your power, but you will give it to him willingly. In fact, you will insist on it." Bright lights awaken you, but this time the dream is clear in your mind. You hurry to the cafeteria to try to talk to Itzel, but the woman doesn't show the slightest bit of recognition and seems unwilling or unable to speak. Disappointed but not totally surprised, you get in line for breakfast and find yourself standing behind Admiral Birdie as he struggles with his tray. The attendants are all busy with other patients, so you carry his tray and help him get his coffee, cream no sugar, and then set the tray down in his usual spot. Matthew is nowhere to be seen, so you sit next to him at the table, and the old man mumbles the sequence that you have now practically memorized. Then quite unexpectedly, he puts a napkin over his mouth and says quietly, "There's a place you'll be safe. Remember this. -74.85, 16, 16, -102.59, 0, 33, 0. Testing, testing. Don't forget. News. No, 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 not happening. Not real. No, no, no. -74.85, 16, 16, -102.59, 0, 33, 0. You'll be safe. go to the library. He then looks around cautiously, and underneath the table he hands you something that feels like a rather bulky pocket watch. "Don't look now," he whispers under his napkin. "Don't let anyone know you have this. Watch out for cameras. Keep it with you always. Go to the library." Then he stands up, leaving his coffee and uneaten breakfast, and totters away, muttering, "Minus 74, 0.85, 16, minus 102, 0.59, 0, 33, 0. Matthew never shows up for breakfast, but shows up in the common room just as Trevor arrives. You and Matthew exchange glances, but you don't speak as Trevor motions to you from the doorway to join her. Your ID tags have been programmed to give you clearance for level 4. However, you'll always need to be accompanied by myself or someone else that I appoint. You're both coming with me today, right this way, she says as you follow her into the hall. Trevor ushers you both to a small electric transport vehicle, one with no doors and enough seating for several people. As you whisk down the hallway, the object Admiral Birdie had given you is burning a hole in your pocket. You are sitting behind Trevor, so you stick your fingertips into your pocket and try to figure out what he could possibly have given you. It seems to be the size and shape of a pocket watch, but much thicker, as if something is contained inside. As you feel the surface, one side is smooth and the other has something inlaid around the outer edge and in the center, and also some type of engraving, but it isn't deep enough for your fingertips to get a sense of what it might look like. All the while you are being automatically scanned as you zip past checkpoints, quietly moving from hallways to stone passageways, and finally into a massive elevator. At level 4, you disembark from your vehicle, your IDs are scanned, and you are both weighed. Then you walk down a wide hallway lined with metallic double doors. Trevor stops at a large, highly polished wooden door and knocks 3 times. "Enter," says a man's voice. Trevor opens the door and says succinctly, "They're here." "Good, I'll be right there." To your surprise, a tall, elegantly dressed man steps through the door. He appears to be in his late 40s with short-cropped, thick, dark hair, light skin, full lips, and striking green eyes. You think he looks more like a model or an actor than a military man. "Hello, Matthew and Amelia. I'm Thomas," he says informally. "Matthew, you're coming with me, and Amelia, you'll go with Trevor." Then Thomas turns to Trevor and says quietly, "Use the Montauk chair for her test." Nodding toward you and Matthew, Trevor says tersely, "Excuse us for just a moment." Then stepping aside with Thomas, she says under her breath, "Sir, it's impossible to know how she'll respond to the chair." Her voice low and insistent. "You can't put someone untrained in a device like that. There's no way to know what would happen." Taking Trevor's arm and walking slowly away from you and Matthew as if it's nothing more than a stroll and an informal chat, Thomas says quietly but firmly, "I want her in that chair. Tell her you're testing her abilities in regard to remote viewing. Do not tell her anything about the history of the chair, just that she needs to focus only on your instructions." "But sir, you don't know what she might do accidentally," says Trevor with genuine concern. "If you tell her what to think, that's what she'll be thinking about," says Thomas calmly. "She's a teenager. She's not calculating. She doesn't have the mentality or the intent of those who've tried to destroy the chair in the past." "I understand that, sir. But if she's as psychic as you think she is, you don't know what she'll pick up on. There are parts of this chair that came from the original one. How do you know what she'll see or feel? Placing her focus on remote viewing is the safest way for us to find out. No more discussion, just report the results, says Thomas briskly as he turns in the opposite direction and proceeds to walk back to you and Matthew. You whisper to Matthew, "Did you notice his suit?" Matthew nods. "My father has hand-tailored suits like that from Italy. The shoes are Italian leather, too." "What do you think it cost?" "Everything all together? Probably around $15,000, maybe more." "Doesn't that seem odd for a man working in a military facility?" you say, unable to overlook the disparity between Thomas's clothing and the various uniforms worn by everyone else. Matthew looks at you and nods, but says nothing as Trevor and Thomas approach. "We're all set," says Thomas amiably. "Right this way, Matthew," he adds with a sweeping gesture. "You're with me," says Trevor with a slight smile and a cordial nod in your direction. As you walk quietly down the hall, you puzzle over what's happening. Trevor's voice sounds a bit strained, as if she's unhappy about something, but is still trying to appear as if nothing is wrong. That in itself doesn't seem unusual, but what bothers you is the feeling that their argument has something to do with you and the test you're about to take. You try not to worry as you follow Trevor into the laboratory with 30-foot ceilings, a glass observation booth containing high-tech instruments, and what appears to be a very intricate-looking control panel. Outside of the booth, in the center of the room, is nothing but a large metallic golden armchair with a square base and no legs, sitting flat on the floor. There are footrests for your feet, and the seat, back, and arms of the chair are padded, except for a space where it seems your hands are meant to rest. "This is the Montauk chair," says Trevor, her voice a bit strained. "Have a seat." Unsure of what is about to happen, your heart beats in anxious anticipation as you tentatively sit down in the chair, which turns out to be surprisingly comfortable and cool beneath your touch, its large arms reaching out in front of you. "Is this chair painted with real gold?" you ask, trying to relieve your nervousness. "No, the chair is made out of gold," says Trevor. "Of course, there are many other components, but everything you see is solid gold." An unidentifiable energy flows through your body, causing you to feel a bit lightheaded. Standing next to you, observing your reactions, Trevor says, "At the end of the chair arms, you'll see indentations for your fingers. Your fingers need to be spread out slightly and held consistently in that position. For this reason, I'm going to connect these clamps just above your wrists so you don't accidentally move your arms." Noticing your discomfort, she adds, "Don't worry, you won't be trapped. This is for your protection." "My protection from what?" you say, feeling frightened and confused while keeping your hands in your lap. "You're here because your test revealed that you have remote viewing capabilities," says Trevor patiently. "We gave you 4 letters that corresponded to an image that you would not normally recognize or consciously understand. You described it more accurately than our trained viewers," she says with a hint of admiration in her voice. "So we're going to skip some of the initial training, and we're just going to see if we can identify your capabilities. The chair will enhance those capabilities, and information will come to me directly through your contact with the chair." "I don't understand," you say, still feeling a bit apprehensive. "How does it work?" "Well, if you were an aerospace engineer with a background in cognitive neuroscience, I could just barely scratch the surface on how the chair works, says Trevor with a smile. But what I can tell you is that the chair is experiential. So even though you won't understand how it works, you'll have your own experience, and then we can talk about it if you have any questions, she says lightly. Are you ready to get started? You nod. You're still a bit anxious, but now you're also intrigued about what kind of experience you'll have. I'm going to ask you to focus on 3 different scenarios. One now, one later today, and one tomorrow morning. But unlike your first test, this will be experiential. It won't appear to be in your imagination. In fact, it may feel quite real to you. You may feel as if you've actually moved through time and space, and it's most likely you'll feel as if you're physically present in each separate scenario. If none of that happens, don't worry. I just don't want you to feel frightened if you find yourself someplace else, says Trevor in finger quotes. You'll still be sitting right here, but the technology embedded in this chair will cause you to think differently. Now, because we want to see your capabilities, I'm not going to give you any training or explain very much about each scenario. I'll give you only what you absolutely need to know, and you must use your own intuition to guide you through the rest. One thing I can tell you is that we want you to report exactly what you see. You don't need to try to understand what you're seeing because much of it won't make sense. Are you feeling relaxed and ready to go? Says Trevor encouragingly. You shrug and nod slightly. All right. This test is to find out whether or not you have remote viewing capabilities beyond what you showed us in your first test. As I said, the chair will amplify your abilities, and you may actually feel as if you are physically in another place. So don't be frightened. No matter where you seem to be or how real everything appears, you will be unseen and untouchable. Also, time will be different. You may feel that you are in a scenario for quite some time, but just like a dream, you'll only be gone for a short period of time. Do you understand? You nod. The program will bring you back automatically, but if something goes wrong, simply think or say, "Go back," and you'll find yourself here in the chair. Before we begin, I'm going to play some music, and I'd like you to sing with it. There are no words, just the sounds of ah and oh. I know that sounds like an odd request, but this will calm your mind and stabilize the rhythms in your body, your brain waves, breath, and heart rate, which in turn will raise the physical frequency of your body and heighten your intuitive abilities. With a nod of encouragement, she says, "Okay, I'll be in the booth." Trevor closes the door, sits down in a chair in front of a panel of lights, and then the lights around you dim. And something about the glass seems to change because you can no longer see into the booth. Then over the intercom, Trevor says, "Okay, I'm going to play the music now. Be sure you sing ah and oh." though you've been singing. You think nothing is happening. And then you see a slight golden shimmer in the air. And in the next moment, it is as if the room has been swallowed in darkness, and your body is no longer seated in the chair.